Hello! It's been a while since the last video covering the Mushoku Tensei anime storyline, right? Yeah, not my fault. The release of episode 19 was delayed a week, therefore this video was also on hold. But we're here now, so time for coverage on Mushoku Tensei Season 2 episodes 17 to 19. Well, sort of. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm providing light novel context on the currently airing season of this series, going over a group of episodes per video as they usually cover one volume of the source material. Done it before with Classroom of the Elite and I'm now doing it with this series. However, going by the rules I set for the video series, the coverage from the last one had to stop halfway through episode 16 as that's where volume 10 wrapped up. So technically I'll be continuing on from there because that's where volume 11 starts. Anyway, let's get down to it by starting with the young Greyrat's household dynamics. With Rudeus now off to continue his search for his demon brethren, it's up to Rudeus and Sylphiette to look after the girls in Paul, Zenith and Lilia's stead. Norn is kinda doing okay for her age considering all she's had to put up with in her life so far. Aisha, as we know by now, is really smart. In the light novel, there's a nice little overview of the children provided by Lilia in a separate letter from Paul's that came in the treasury box. Aisha reached beginner tier in water god style and in all 6 basic schools of magic: fire, water, wind, earth, healing and detoxification magic. Naturally, she's got a handle on the conventional education topics like maths, literature, history, geography, otherwise Ruija, Ginger, Norn and herself wouldn't have reached Sharia so quick. This left Lilia with not much for her to teach her daughter in the last year before the girls were sent off. She's just become a little conceited though, and to be fair, even saying that word is kinda harsh to me, because she's 10 years old. Yeah, she's clever enough to probably know what it means. If not, she could just look it up and figure out its meaning and might not even need an example to use it in the right context. But to me, she just seems like someone who's shy of being the perfect child. Aisha takes the university entry test as a challenge and sure enough she gets a perfect score. Therefore she gets to be the Greyrat household maid. A shame for Genius, the Magic University's vice principal, who was really excited at the thought of having 2 more Greyrats at the university when Rudeus told him that his sisters were travelling here. After he saw Aisha's exam results, he was willing to enroll her as a special student under certain conditions. But her goal was to be Rudeus's servant, not the family's. Yeah, I wish I could say your indecent thoughts that spring to mind aren't warranted, but unfortunately, you wouldn't be wrong. Moving on to Norn. As you would expect from her, she's still kinda standoffish towards Rudeus because she still remembers him punching the shit out of their dad. I mean, considering that's your first memory of your brother, that's kind of hard to forget. Probably another reason why Paul was so apologetic in his letter. Unlike her gifted sister, Norn gets a somewhat average grade in the exam. She was already willing to go to school but goes on to say she wants to stay in the dorms instead of at the house. Rudeus grants her request, setting Aisha off as a consequence. Yeah, that thing Aisha says thinking she's just the mistress's daughter is true. Well, it isn't. I mean, the dialogue is canon. As well as Lilia's self-deprecating influence taking effect, her step-grandma, Rudeus and Norn's grandma, has got a huge stick up her ass. As a way of reassuring Aisha that he's treating both of them fairly, Rudeus also says she wouldn't have granted Norn the same wish of not attending school if she asked. This is simply because Norn actually could do with some more education before going out in the world venturing into other avenues. Rudeus got a better grasp of their situation after that little scene. While Aisha got scorned constantly by her step-grandma and Lilia about her place in the family, she took it upon herself to prove she's more than that by doing her best in every way, with the added bonus of shaming up her half-sister. In turn, Norn became more withdrawn as she knew that whatever she does, she will always come up short against Aisha. Moving on. No joke, Persena and Lilia try and cheer up Rudeus with a bag full of undies. I mean, it's the thought that counts, and to be fair, it's his fault for showing them his holy relic. Moving on. The episode that's centered around Norn is just great. This episode, the other one focused on Nanahoshi, and maybe another episode later on is where you get some real character mood exploration. And these are the types of stuff that I may be too lazy to actively search for in a series, but when I bump into them, I am oh so glad that I did. The episode really hits home for what it's like being young and the only person that hates and fears another person, and how it can really screw with someone's mind. I can be wrong and strong, but I'm getting on in life. Could I have done that when I was 10? No chance. We get a nice character moment with Rudeus coming to terms with the fact that he's indirectly at fault with his sister's withdrawal to everything, and a reference to his past life reminding us why he's trying to do right by the people around him rather than just discarding them at his convenience. And after that barrier between the two siblings has been broken,
Rudeus notes that Norn's introspection skills far exceed his.
But I'll go further and say it's damn near better than a lot of people at the age of 10.
Almost as if it was unrealistic.
But I'm not going to ruin the moment because let's be honest, this is a story. And the reverbed opening song playing towards the end of that Rudeus and Norn scene? Yeah, that's a nice touch. Moving on, Rudeus can't seem to say no to Aisha apart from the very indecent proposal. In the light novel, as Rudeus' dedicated servant, she is willing to learn more magic from him. Rudeus does note that it's nigh impossible to teach someone voiceless incantation to someone who's 10, but more probable to increase that same person's mana pool. I say this because other than taking a few lessons at the university, he's only there to complete his thesis on voiceless incantation. This is how much the university value his talents and how much of a big shot he actually is in the world. Moving on. So during the scene with Rudeus and Xanaba's party of 3, Xanaba actually strangles the shit out of Ginger for meddling in his relationship between Rudeus and himself. Similarly what he did to Cliff during the house job, but this time went for the neck. And when I say meddling, all she did was somewhat express her unease at the way Rudeus talks to Xanaba, without knowing that Xanaba in fact asked that he be more informal with him. Yeah, I'll be honest, this was a surprise to me as I was reading it for the first time, and I guess having this in the anime would have led to more misinterpretation of the character. We already know that Xanaba is obsessed with dolls. Rudeus dubbed him this world's version of an otaku, and while I understand that Xanaba's actions in the light novel are in fact in line with what's been spoken about him, this would simply be too much for the snowflake anime viewers. Moving on. Sylphiette's pregnancy announcement. Now to me, yes, it's really sweet, but it also comes with an asterisk. At this point, I shouldn't need to say why, so the more accurate term for me is that it's cringy sweet. Moving on. The turning point. That sweet, sweet turning point. This is my chance to finally talk about the man god. At this point, there isn't really much to say about him, so I'll be brief. So the man god is a mysterious figure in a clearly sectioned off place in the Mushoku Tensei world. He makes his first appearance in the show in Rudeus' dreams after an abnormal teleportation disaster, to which we find out the only other world art was at the epicenter of. He shows up to give Rudeus advice that has seriously helped him on his journey, and after carelessly confirming that he knows the man god to the very first person who asks about him, Rudeus and his adventurer party dead end get obliterated by this guy with ease who is walking with that same otherworldly person. Yeah, no shock, something is cooking. However, before you start salivating expecting a big revelation in that plot development, need I remind you that this is a light novel based anime that's only finished covering the 11th of a 26 volume series. Moving on. Due to Rudeus' extremely large mana pool, Nanahoshi couldn't afford to lose him for 2 years while she's working on her experiment, so she provides him the means to drastically shorten his time on the road via teleportation. This was widely used during the time of both wars between humans and demons. Teleportation is now a forbidden art, and the local authorities are ordered to destroy any ruins that are essentially teleportation hubs. Apparently that's a thing that would really piss off Orsted, therefore Nanahoshi was sworn to secrecy. For that reason, Elena Lise almost immediately wrote off Cliff to be an option to tag along for the ride. She thought that there's a chance that he'd let the cat out the bag, as well as him not being accustomed to the harsh conditions of the Beggarit continent and adventuring as a whole. The latter reason was the same for Xanaba not tagging along, but there was also the case of Julie and Ginger. At the same time, the point about Cliff and Xanaba not being suited to long treks was made before Nanahoshi gave Rudeus the keys to teleportation, but that still left one viable reason each for not bringing the two of them along. Moving on. Rudeus doesn't visit everyone before he heads out. The clue is in the set of people you didn't see in the monologue but were actually there for his wedding. Just remember that for, oh right, most likely next season. Moving on. I didn't want to mention what I'm about to say as it's not exactly important to the story, though considering it's related to how Studio Bind are going about telling this story in comparison to the source material, I may as well say something. You know this anime is more of a seinen, right? So there are more adult themes. Well, Elena Lise and Cliff screw a lot. So when I saw that wholesome scene of the two of them hugging, it reminded me of how watered down the show is in terms of displaying scenes. I mean themes. And I'm definitely not complaining. This is by no means the show's worst offense. We know Elena Lise has what seems to be a curse that's the source of her high libido, so so there's no need to parade it. Moving on, Rudeus does take 2 books from the library on his journey. One about the Greyrat continent and another about the labyrinth that Paul and his party are trying to explore, which you'll later find that the latter will come in clutch in the next episode. Moving on, the NPC adventurer that tagged along part way on the journey to the ruins was paid to do so and escort the horse that Rudeus brought back to the house. Moving on, as Rudeus was waiting for Ellen Alice to come back to the Greyrat side for the teleportation device, he did some snooping and saw some robes in a wardrobe. Yeah, they most probably belong to Orsted. Judging from that expression, he might have experienced some form of PTSD, and to be honest, I would too. Moving on, the next point I'm about to make isn't that important considering the way time flies in the series, but I might as well provide clarity. Rudeus had to wait around 10 minutes for Ellen Alice to return, deducing that there's a time delay of around 5 minutes per teleportation trip. Moving on, so in the Greyrat continent, it's really hot there, probably well over 50 degrees Celsius. For more context on how hot it is, Rudeus and Ellen Alice kept their hoods on during the day to avoid getting scorched by the sun, even after Rudeus lowered the temperature of their surroundings with his magic. Yet with his hood still on, his head felt like it was on fire. To make the journey more tolerable, he froze the water in one of his canteens and slipped it inside his clothing and refroze it when necessary. Also, notice how Rudeus is out of breath in comparison to Ellen Alice in one scene? Well, there's a reason for that, and if you've paid attention to the series so far, this isn't the first time we've seen Rudeus exhausted while on a long trek. He has a weakness that I'm not going to explain right now. Yes, at this point in the light novel, they made it clear why Rudeus has such a weakness, but spoilers, there's a very good chance you'll get an explanation in the coming episodes. Light novel readers, don't go there. Let the anime onlys enjoy what's to come. Anime onlys though, store this. Moving on, succubi. Yeah, they exist, and thanks to them, this will be the first time detoxification magic is used on screen. Also, I thought as I was watching. Honestly, I don't know why I even got so giddy about it, but whatever. This is the first time we've seen battles this season. No, I'm not counting that moment with the weird doll during the house job a fight. And some of you would argue that it's hard pressed to call the ones that we've seen so far fights. But they are. Simply put, the people of this world battle to survive. They don't fight for fighting's sake. At least not all of them do. But almost everyone uses weapons, so it's either kill or be killed. Also, other than the wooden swords we've seen for sparring sessions, you don't see a blunt instrument as a weapon. This is because if you think about it, using a weapon that doesn't cut and kill is another way of forfeiting your life, especially when the basic level healing spell can heal any non-fatal wound and the intermediate level being able to heal some but not all fatal injuries. Both can be done with a chant the length of a compound sentence. So yeah, long drawn out fights are functionally not a thing in this series. If the characters are going for the kill, they do it for the here and now, not allowing their enemies to escape, as there's a good chance they could be as good as new the next day. Episode 19 of season 2 goes to show how Ellen Alice, a veteran S-rank adventuring elf and voiceless spellcasting mage Rudeus with a functionally bottomless mana pool can do business. We've seen our main character in the last core take down a dragon virtually by himself. A couple battles with a few monsters that are only a fair bit larger than humans are a piece of cake for the two of them. There was a little subplot that the anime left out entirely. As the pair approach Bazaar, they bump into some mercenaries fighting off some monsters. After they helped them defeat the monsters, the mercenaries gave thanks but quickly gave way in search of their cargo. The next morning, Rudeus and Ellen Alice were still in Bazaar in search for a merchant also making their way to Rapan to find the same people they saved from monsters the day before. The merchant in charge of the group, named Galban, hired Rudeus and Ellen Alice as bodyguards for their journey to Rapan to make up for the numbers lost during that griffin attack. The journey is a long and arduous one, so I can only assume Rifuji no Maganote included them to fill up the story. No point making a story about a man and a woman on a long trek and they can't f***, right? Not really entertaining for a light novel reader, but considering the mini story about a group of people that we never see again in the series, hint hint, Studio Bind must have thought that there was no point including them in the anime. And that's fair, though I will say it's still a shame they didn't get to do some sort of rendition, because in the mini story, after the makeshift party gets attacked by a well-known bandit group, but managed to get away thanks to Rudeus's magic spell Deep Mist, a combination of a water and 2 fire spells, followed by summoning a thick 2-meter wall in the mist, one of the bodyguards argued that he could have killed the bandits if he wanted to. Ellen Alice and the party managed to calm her down and don't blame Rudeus for his shortcomings. However, the incident did have Rudeus concerned about himself for a minute, because it wasn't that he hesitated to kill. Apart from the bandit riders that may have collided headfirst into the walls in the mist, the thought of killing those men never crossed his mind. Then he said to himself that when he thinks about murdering people with his magic, it makes him queasy, and admitted that it was kind of pathetic. And I also agree, simply because it's kind of a double standard, and he's got no problems killing monsters, so yeah, I don't know about that one, Rudeus, but honestly, I'll save that topic for another video. As for this video, this is where I'm going to wrap it up for now. Episode 19 ends more or less in the same point Volume 11 ends. A video covering the next load of episodes probably won't be out for another 4 weeks, provided that there are no delays. If you overall enjoyed what you got from this video, please leave a like. It helps these videos get pushed out for others like yourselves, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Have a blessed one. See ya.